Welcome to another episode of Rotten Disparities. Today, we're going to address the downfall of an artist. Hello, welcome to the weekend. I am your host, Tyler. Thank you for joining the HolmFront. With me is obviously my overly artistic friend, Mitch. Mitch, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm back.
You're back.
I'm very artistic today.
Very. I hope so, because we're about to tackle somebody that used to be and now is no longer.
Oh, who's this?
He's a one-time favorite and recent non-favorite of ours by the name of M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, yes. The days of Shyamalan.
I appreciate the mock surprise. We haven't talked about this at all. So, Shyamalan is an interesting figure. It's not traditional in the way of a Rotten Disparity episode. We're going to be talking about the man himself rather than, well, we're talking a little bit about the stuff that he created, but more about him.
Well, like his style and kind of where he went wrong, because I think that part is self-evident. His his Sixth Sense film is fantastic, and then it's like slowly they started to get worse, and then there's like this turning point where they're just all bad. And it's critics and audiences, everybody just thinks his films are terrible now. So yeah, he's definitely an interesting figure to talk about because he keeps making movies. Even just recently, he had a Trap, his most recent film. So
right. Yeah. I saw the trailer for that and a review on it. I have not personally seen the film. I don't think I will.
This is one of those, I saw the trailer and it showed me the movie, so...
It literally does. Yeah, I watched the trailer and I was like, that was the whole thing right there.
Really weird.
Yeah,
That's why trailers suck. I rest my case.
For a man famous for twists, yeah, why would you ever put that in your trailer? So we view Shyamalan as the disparity in this one. So I just watched Sixth Sense today.
Masterpiece. Great film.
It is. So I was flabbergasted when I was watching this movie. I was like...
This is your only second time viewing it, huh?
Yes. I may have like...
Real hard about that.
I'm trying to remember if I've watched it in the interim, because the first time I saw it was, man... years and
you were like
I was in high school.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I remember you talking about it. And I think I was fresh out of high school or something like that.
Did I watch it before you did? Yeah, because you didn't watch horror movies.
I didn't really watch
films.
horror. Yeah, so I didn't really know that much about it. I actually had the Sixth Sense spoiled for me, and then I watched the movie and forgot about the spoiler. So I got to be surprised anyways. I was very gullible like that.
I did not know the ending of this movie. I forgot how I got this past them, because I was living with my parents. My parents would never have allowed me to watch this movie. I don't understand how I got this one.
I think you watched it on like your laptop.
No, I watched it on my TV.
Oh, really? Okay.
With my sister.
Huh.
So we watched it together. She was obviously not a fan.
She didn't like it?
No, she hates scary movies like this.
One of those.
It was just enough to where she was like, yeah. There we go.
It's good to be scared sometimes.
Well, we'll go with that. Yeah, not everyone agrees. My dad does not agree with you.
Well, he's not on the show, so
he's not on the show. Yeah, who cares? His opinion does not matter. Yeah, so Sixth Sense is a total, complete masterpiece. I'm honestly surprised that it's not 100% on this.
Yeah, what is the score on Rotten Tomatoes?
That. We are at an 86% critic score and a 90%.
You're showing a sign.
I'm showing signs.
You fool. You fool.
Idiot. Oh, I did this for both. Oh, I'm going to have to change this live. This is going to be fun. Let's see. Here we go. Boom. Nailed it. Okay, 86% and 90%.
By the way, we're going to be doing probably full spoilers for both of these movies, just as a heads up.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you've not seen them.
Yeah, if you haven't seen these, you're retarded, so...
Bruce Willis is dead.
He's dead. He's dead the whole time. So... Yeah, so I watched this again, obviously knowing the spoilers and such, but I
Yeah.
wanted to know how many clues he gives you and how he sets them up. And I was like, man, uh, every shot he masterfully details in order to point in the right direction without giving anything away,
Yeah.
which is an incredible talent. Like, you have to work really hard to
Yeah.
make sure that each shot in each frame and each beat of the plot is doing that for you. And he did it. And
Mhm.
like, nobody saw it coming. That was one of the most incredible things about the film, is that,
Yeah.
is this,
Everybody's just said you had to go see it, and
right.
just get to the theater and go see it right now because I can't say anything.
Yeah,
That
because
was like the vibe.
after Psycho, I think
Mhm.
this is one of the most well-regarded twists in history, in film history, that
Oh,
I know of.
absolutely. Yeah.
Which is
And
why people were like, "Man, this guy's like the next Hitchcock kind of a thing."
yeah, I remember that the dialogue.
Yep.
Oh, he's like Hitchcock. Like, oh my
Right.
gosh. And then we kept watching his movies, being like, oh, that was kind of a weird one.
Yeah.
I don't know how I felt about that. It kind of seemed like it was a bad movie, but I'm not ready to accept that reality just yet.
It can't
And then-
be. It can't.
Well, like with The Village, I remember that being the most prominent. Is all this dialogue like, this is it's interesting.
Uh-oh.
It's different. And then after a while, just being like, you know what? It's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So with Hitchcock, also, I think he did something similar with when he made Psycho.
Yes.
There was a disclaimer at the end of the film. It was like, "Hey, don't tell anybody the twist. It's the point of the film is that you don't know what's coming."
And Hitchcock went out and actually bought copies of the novel that it was based on.
Yes.
It's like all over.
He bought every copy he
Yeah.
could find and stashed them away so no one could read it.
What a nut.
So then I know he's nuts. For Shyamalan, I don't know what happened during this film. I just know that a lot of
He
people
failed.
No, I mean, like, when it came out, if there was like a disclaimer or
Oh.
something that was like, "Hey, don't talk about it."
Oh, that's right. You're talking about Sixth Sense for now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump to the end.
Well, we got plenty of show left to go. So yeah, this one, I mean, it was a well hid secret, apparently,
Mhm.
well enough, and it held long enough until finally. And you know, what do you do with that information? Like, Bruce Willis is dead. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Or he was dead the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, even if you know that, there's enough, like, because I mean, the film shows you that he dies at the very beginning, but then it fades out and then fades into the next sequence in which he's alive again,
Right.
and it's set in the future, or not like the future, but it's set like a year or so later or whenever
Right.
it takes place, and so you just assume like, oh, I guess he got better. He did not get better.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the things that's interesting because I remember seeing it the first time. I was like, "Oh, we're back now." So, and he did the masterful way that he covers it is that now he's having marital issues. So you're like, "Oh, okay." So they're just unable to recover from this event
Yeah,
because it's an ex-patient of his that breaks in, and obviously a break-in is like very psychologically traumatic, and so it's tough to.
And then he straight up shoots her husband, and so
Yeah, shoots her husband, and then he shoots himself in the house. But he's broken into the house too, which is very damaging to a lot of people. Like, this is my sanctum, so if someone gets in, now it's very hard to feel safe, and so it very often leads to marital problems.
Mm-hmm.
And because both of them on some level would lead to blaming Malcolm because it was his patient, and the patient's like blaming him for not being able to help him and such.
Right.
So, all that being said, it's all masterfully shot. There's extremely subtle nuances that he does throughout the whole movie that leads you to, like, when you rewatch it with that lens, you're like, oh, that's why he didn't go in the room, or she only says this line,
and then he doesn't, or they don't respond to him saying this, or
exactly
because they can't hear him because he's a ghost. He's not there.
Right. And like I said, they give you the answers. Because they don't even necessarily blatantly say that Haley Osment's character knows that he's dead.
Yeah.
But it kind of leads you to believe that maybe he did.
Mm-hmm.
But also at the same time, it's like he's also scared of all the other ones he's encountered. So would he treat him the same way if he knew he was dead? Or is he just one of the more normal acting ones? Like, it's very... I don't know. There's a lot of questions that are very interesting that it leaves you with as well, while also resolving everything properly.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think about this movie? I've been talking a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfect movie. I think the 86% by critics is
A little low.
it's a little low, but I mean, I think some of the acting probably did not sit well with them because it's a very Shyamalan has like a hard time getting good performances out of people. I mean, it's still good in Sixth Sense, but that's because Bruce Willis knows what he's doing.
Yep.
Haley Joel Osment is kind of I mean, he has the perfect look for the character, and he seemed to understand what he was supposed to do very well.
Yep.
And then his mom, I forget her name, but she does a great job too.
Yeah.
But I mean, she seems like she seems like she can do that character. Like they all seem like
Toni Collette.
Toni Collette, yes. They all seem like they can do their characters without the need of Shyamalan. Like,
yeah, they're all professionals to the level that they need to be, at least.
Basically, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, you know, so the guy who breaks into the house and shoots Bruce Willis at the beginning of the movie, this is his only scene. That actor, I saw an interview with him, and he actually said that he spent, it was like 48 hours, like he was talking with his friend. They were out on a walk, and then he was like, this is just so hard to get into this character's mind. And he's like, well, just get into it now. Like, pretend I'm a ghost. And so he did, and then he ran off because he said he'd be freaked out from a ghost. And his friend didn't go after him. His friend just acted like a ghost and meandered on. And then he said he was just outside all night. And so he was like, I could have gone back to the hotel and gotten some rest. He's like, but I couldn't do that. He's like, because I know this character wouldn't have felt safe or comfortable anywhere. He said he like totally put his mind into the state where he couldn't trust anybody. He didn't know who was alive or who was dead. So he shows up to the movie and he tells Bruce Willis, I think I should do this scene naked. And Bruce Willis goes, that sounds cool. Why do you want to do that? That's like seriously what he said. And he's just like, because I can't remember exactly what he said, but he basically said that it would make it clear that it's not just some random robbery, that this guy's mentally unstable or something like that.
Like it's a shock value thing. Like I'm here to stay and my intentions are not good.
Yeah,
it just visually represents that.
Yeah,
that's fair.
It adds this extra alarm level because you clearly understand, like, oh my goodness, okay, this person needs help, as opposed to like, oh my goodness, like, is this a threat after me or whatever? Like,
right.
Because you don't actually realize how much of a threat he is until he pulls the gun out.
Right.
And then it's like, oh wow. So I think that actually worked really well for it.
It actually makes it shocking too, because this is gonna sound weird, but I was like, I didn't remember him being. He's in his underwear, so.
Yeah.
But they go into their bedroom or whatever, and they're about to get their spicy time on, and they notice that the window's broken and there's some stuff on the floor that's broken. Uh-huh. And then he like walks back towards the bathroom and he sees clothes on the ground first.
Yes.
And then he sees the guy. So the guy's standing there in his whitey tighties or whatever. Uh-huh. And again, sounds weird, but I'm like, he pulls a gun. Where's he got the gun right now? Like, has he got it in his like underwear waistband or something? Like, and so it disarms you from realizing that is a threat because you can see what he does and does not have, or at least you assume you do.
Yeah.
So it's super shocking when it happens.
Well, when you see him, he has his back turned in one shot, and then he turns around and like pulls up the gun. So I always assume that he reached and grabbed the gun from when he left it on the counter or whatever.
Could be. Either way, it was a disarming mechanism visually.
Yeah.
To make you realize or think that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So maybe he can take him.
Yeah. It's interesting that this is a compliment heavily attributed to the actor, though, not to Shyamalan. And I am going to get to Shyamalan. I do have compliments
You're just
for him
like,
too.
I'm not
movie.
giving this to you.
No, I will. But it's just kind of like sometimes, like, part of the credit to Sixth Sense, I think, is other people involved. I mean, a big portion of it is Shyamalan not screwing it up, and he did write it. And I think the script writing is like a big proponent for why it works. But I do think it's interesting that there's like other people involved that can accomplish the stuff. And that scene, they only did it one take. And the guy who was playing that, his ex-patient or whatever, he said that after they shot the scene, Shyamalan went up to him and was like, that was great. That came out awesome. And he was like, really? And he's like, yeah, it came out great. And he's like, should we do it again? And he's like, no, that was great. But he
That's
said he
actually
was like, okay. He's like, because I don't remember what happened. I just kind of blacked out that whole time. It was like crazy method
Sheesh.
levels of investment. But you totally get that
Oh yeah.
from him. Like his performance, as short as it is, because like I think he knew, like he said, he's like, I'm like starting off this movie as the inciting incident. If I screw up anything, the whole movie's gonna fail, and it'll be my fault. I think is how he took it. So he was like, I gotta be. And that's a similar attitude that some of the other people had, including Shyamalan, because Shyamalan, in interviews and stuff, he talks about going through the script and reach the end and thinking to himself, this isn't good. This isn't like strong enough. So he went back and he's like, I tried again. And he's like, and I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. It's like, then I finally figured out an ending. And I thought, that's good. That's an interesting twist. I could work with that. And he's like, and then what did I do? I went back and rewrote the rest of the script over and over and over and over until everything was just perfect to support this one idea.
Gotcha.
And, you know, this is like, just do that for the rest of your movies. Because it worked here. And it's just an interesting example of, you know, someone like Shyamalan, who now we just associate with really bad thriller movies. But clearly he has the talent there. But, I mean, it seems like that talent can't get you everywhere if you don't put in the hard work.
Yeah, it was almost art through adversity or art through refinement, because he just put it in through until it was finally gold. But, yeah, that's an interesting point, because the guy, like, that is, you know, the selling point of the film, or the hook, I guess.
Yeah.
Because not only does it give you the answer or the setup for what the movie actually is, but it's a very compelling performance, because you're just kind of watching this like fairly generic married couple scene. Yeah. And it sets up some good things for the characters or whatever, but there's nothing there that's like inherently.
They establish what his job is,
right,
and that she's proud of him and that they love each other. And
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they introduced the theme of ghosts too. I actually like the opening shot of the movie is the light bulb slowly turning on in the basement, and then she comes down in a red dress, and
gotcha.
She pulls out a wine bottle, and then there's this shot where she's like it's really cold down in the basement, but like he's already introduced to us the theme of ghosts, because whenever ghosts are around, it's very cold, and there's usually at least one person wearing some kind of red article of clothing to signify, like, I guess, like blood, or, you know,
potentially
something like that.
I had not caught that until you pointed it out, and then I was like, oh, okay.
Then it was everywhere.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, not everywhere in the sense where it was distracting or obvious. It was just like, oh yeah, that is a nice. I mean, it makes the whole film have a nice color palette, because you get these like splashes of red to come up every now and then.
Right.
Because the rest of the film is pretty dour visually. There's not a lot of color. I mean, there is exceptions, like when they go to the house, Kira's the ghost girl who dies, and they're having the funeral at the home, and the wallpaper is just this like stark, depressing blue, but everyone's like feeling blue, feeling down. Makes sense.
Gotcha.
You know, so the production design is actually really, really good in this movie, or the art direction, I guess it would be.
Yeah, so I think that's what confuses me so much about this film, is that on so many levels, it's so carefully crafted and put together.
Yeah.
Script writing, that one actor with the one scene, like putting his heart and soul into it. I mean, I know that's his decision, but it still went into this project, because, like you were saying, film is a collaborative project. So everybody's working together here.
Well, and Shyamalan had the restraint too in that moment to be like, no, you did a great job, and to like also let him like, yeah, okay, you want to try it like in Yandees? Okay, let's try it. You know what I mean? Like that.
He allowed
that is
the actors
also,
to breathe. Yeah,
that is also, because we've talked about it before, where directors could be like strangling their actors or their production crew, and it's like, don't do that. Like, you need the creativity to flourish. So like, part of that credit I think I would give to Shyamalan, just because it's like it is a sign of good. Like, just being like, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I think what you did was really good there. That looked awesome. I'm not going to intervene too much. You seem like you have a handle on this.
Right. Well, and if you trust someone enough to do the job that you've asked them to do based on...
Yeah, you cast them. So
right, exactly.
You clearly have faith in them.
So let them do their things. And he did, obviously, to the best of his ability, and maybe even above that. But so there's that. There's all the
too much.
There's the visual cues, which was the third one, with the red showing up. It's kind of that subconscious thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it, like I said, it brings up those questions that are interesting as well.
Yeah.
Again, watching it on the second time, when she goes down to the basement and she gets the shiver or whatever, I was like, why? Like, what are we introducing here? Because there's no one dead there yet.
Right.
I'm assuming maybe the guy brought ghosts in with him or something.
No, I just think it's cold. It's
Okay.
just so in the basement, it's just cold. But Shyamalan wants us to know right up front when the movie starts, hey, this isn't like a married couple romance movie. This is a spooky, scary movie.
Oh,
So
okay.
he's just giving us just a little moment
Gotcha.
of her being alone, isolated, feeling cold, and spooked out. And so
Okay.
it's a nice like it's a part of their evening that does happen that you ordinarily wouldn't think that you need to see, but because he chooses to show it to us when the scary thing does happen and there's an invasion.
It's almost like you're kind of prepped.
Yeah, he puts it in. He wants you to put it in your unconscious mind.
Gotcha.
Like, oh, that's kind of a weird way to start for this kind of movie. And he's going, you know, and that's good. Like he gave us a clue because that way you can go back and be like, oh yeah, it did feel kind of spooky. I remember that.
Again, that's like how intentional this film feels from start to finish. And
intentional is such a great word to describe this movie.
Everything in it is intentional. Everything.
Yep.
And that's why I was just like, man,
he doesn't let a frame
is...
go by that doesn't have like a greater purpose to the story.
Right.
It's beautiful.
It's insane, and it's like that's why it's so confusing to me. Why he goes off the rails. Because it's such a masterpiece. I'm like, man, you put so much thought into each line, to each shot, to each color palette. Like there's nothing there that is wasted.
Yep.
Right. This film, like what you were saying, is the perfect film because it's so tight. Everything.
Yeah.
Even his shots, which historically we are not fans of with Shyamalan. He's just like, he lasts too long on certain frames, and he's too far away a lot of the times. Like there's that scene in The Village where it's he's like 300 yards away.
I can't believe you remember that because I know exactly the shot you're talking about.
I know you do.
They're walking away and then they stop and they look at each other and they start talking and then they walk away
further. The camera never moves.
The camera never moves. It's all the way back here.
You're like, what's happening over there?
You're like,
I can still hear them, but what are they doing?
I couldn't even hear them that well. They get so far away that it's like starting to fade. I'm like, what?
Yeah, let's go up to them. I'm watching them. There's nothing else here that I need to see. There's just grass.
It's like this 4-minute shot.
It's
like
so
why? You can't see the Momo in any way.
Well, that was another thing I was looking for with this one because I was like,
does he have annoying shots like that?
Yeah. Does he do the Shyamalan before the Shyamalan? Because I know this is one of his earlier films or whatever. And so I was watching and be like, is there something here I'm not gonna like?
Right.
And it's not like. It's not inherently artistically shot, I guess. It's not like a crazy cinematographer that's trying his best, but everything is just so tight. Like it's
very controlled and it's very smart. Because it likes to work on both levels. So many of those shots he'll do, like with the dinner scene, and he comes. It's all one take. He comes in, he sits down, so the camera like follows him, and then it pans over to like her. And they're having this conversation. He's like, sorry, I'm late. And he's like confessing that he's late to their anniversary dinner. And then she looks like she's upset with him. And you're like, oof, this isn't going well. And then the guy comes in, the waiter, he drops the bill. And then Bruce Willis goes to pay for it. And then she reaches her hand faster than him and pulls it and then signs it. And then just says happy anniversary, like when she's looking down and then walks off. And initially it seems like she's mad at him and just kind of like disappointed. But then you replay it after you know that he's dead and you're like, oh, he was never there, so she was having dinner, and it's like, this poor thing, so she went out to have dinner even though he wasn't there, just out of respect for their connection.
Right.
And so like it's just such a nicely contained moment, and there's tons of those in the movie because he knows like, okay, Bruce Willis' character is not actually there for all these other people, but you have to be doing this so that it seems like it could go either way, so that way the audience is not worried about it until the end. And I replay this same clip later, and they go, oh, he was dead the whole time. So
totally had me the whole movie.
Yeah.
Which it does. I mean, it does a very good job. Because that's the thing. One of the things that he did really well was that he told multiple narratives in such a way that you're compelled by all of them, and you don't realize that there's another one that's going on.
Yeah.
So it's another masterful way of covering it up because, it's essentially, I guess you'd have to write two plots because you have one that's Bruce Willis's, then you have one that's Haley Osment's. That's like,
Yeah.
obviously they connect, but they're both also being told separately.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until the end. And then it's
Yeah.
a nice thing to go back and think about later because you're like, oh, wow, all those things meant something different than what I initially assumed them to be. And he does that so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's extremely intentional, the things he allows you to see and doesn't. Like there was a scene that was really interesting where the wife has this guy, this suitor that keeps showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce Willis sees her hug him at work.
Yeah.
And he like hits the window, but you don't see him hit the window. You hear the noise, and then they see the window cracked, and you see him walking away, like massaging his fist.
Uh-huh.
And at first, you're like, that was kind of odd, because
Yeah.
everything is there properly, but it takes away a little bit. You don't see him hit it, or you don't see him looking through the window. You just see them.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're watching through his eyes, because they hug, he hits the window, and then the camera backs up. Like it's trying to get away from them or trying to hide. So you feel like you're in his vision or something. So it's a way of telling that story without like alluding to the fact that he's not actually there in the first place.
Yeah.
It's very well, like I said, there's a lot of praise to this film that it deserves.
Yeah. I mean, him being a bit of a failure afterwards does not undo the fact that this is still a great movie. And
it is a masterpiece. It's a perfect film.
It really is. Because I mean, you change one scene, you take one thing out of this movie, or you add one thing in, and it's like you ruin the perfect balance. And it's easy to tell that this is a perfect movie because it like has to be. If you make a mistake, the whole thing crumbles.
Yep.
Because it's like you need to know certain things at certain points, and not a moment too soon or too late. Otherwise, we can't get that payoff. So. And I also think that and here's where it's like a big difference with a lot of his other movies. The heart in this movie is very strong.
Yeah.
It actually is about important emotional like catharsis. So you have Bruce Willis's character who at first at one point when we were going through the ending, I was like, wait a minute. He's supposed to tell his wife something here and to absolve that, but she's not going to hear him. Does that matter? And then what he says to her is like, I think I had to stay because I had to help someone. And then I was like, oh, that's right. That was Cole.
Yeah.
So he had to help because it's like the damage of like, oh my goodness, I thought I helped this person and then I didn't. And, they killed him, but like he still couldn't let that go. So he becomes a ghost because he's like, that has to be resolved somehow. And so then he finds someone who's also suffering from the same condition and he helps him through that particular trauma. And then it's like, okay, I can go to rest now. I needed to do this one more thing, which is like a really powerful sentimental thing of like not being able to let go of life because you needed to do something good for someone, right? That's like such a powerful virtue.
Well, that was his biggest failure, especially because... So
from a narrative angle, it's like absolving this crux that he was blinded by. He didn't know that he thought he'd helped him.
The thing about that one too is that he hides, he veils that one as well, because one of the things that she says to him while he has like this placard in the beginning, and it's this award that he'd been given from the mayor about how he helps kids and stuff.
Yeah.
And then
his psychology efforts or whatever.
Right. And then his wife is like, because he like tries to downplay it because it's weird. I wouldn't like sitting there looking at a placard that I'd gotten and like, let's revere me for here. Because he says something like, let's put it in the bathroom. Like, I don't, I'm glad that I'm doing work for people, but I don't really like care to be recognized like this. And she's trying to make it this romantic moment. But then she uses that to lead into the fact that like, you put everything on hold. You've even put me behind all this work. Like I've come second to this. And so you assume throughout this movie, or at least the first time you think back after you realize that he's dead, oh, that must be the thing. Because he even says that. He's like, you never came second. And he like on some level you would obviously hate to have left it in that way, like left her feeling that way. But at the same time, you also realize that maybe she did actually come second. Because the reason he does stay is to help Cole.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder which one is actually the truth. And it kind of brings up a lot of interesting philosophical questions because they also make a connection with with Cole's character and the character that kills himself in the beginning is that character apparently also had the ability to hear from ghosts or something, or at least they
the
strongly
Sixth
allude to
Sense.
it. Yeah, the Sixth Sense. So, on just a quick tangent, I think they should make a film called The Seventh Sense, where Bruce Willis comes back and starts finding these kids that are gifted, right?
Okay.
And he starts killing them because they shouldn't be in the world.
What if I'm with you for the most part, but I think what he should do is put them together into a team.
Oh, yes. Yeah, like a Super Friends.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it can connect to the Split movie.
And then he could start linking all the other movies.
Yep. And then all of his movies will be connected.
What if the Seventh Sense is the ability to travel through time?
Oh.
So that way when they go through
like
time...
a multiverse. We should have a Shyamalan multiverse.
A Shyamalan'verse.
Yep. Anyway, you were going to make a real point. Sorry. Actually, we should not air this because he's going to watch it and be like...
He'd be like, that's interesting.
And Disney's going to be like, here's your contract. Make it. I want royalties if that happens. Here, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm getting a little lost in what my point was. Cole. So Cole has an arc that also needs to be resolved, but his is good too. He's having this conflict with his mother because he can see ghosts, and sometimes their ghosts hang around him because he can see them, and so they are trying to get his attention. So ghosts are around the house all the time, and they're constantly disrupting things in like small ways. And she's freaked out about that, and she just blames him because she can't see the ghosts. And so she is like, oh, like my kid's like disturbed and I don't know what to do about this. And so they're having, I mean,
that's fair.
It's a bit odd, some of these things.
Well, she also thinks that it's a physical problem, like there's actual real abuse going on. Because there's that scene where the kids shove him in the closet or whatever, and then she finds a bunch of bruises and scratches all over him.
Yeah.
And so she associates the two, and there's not actually an association.
And then when she takes him to the hospital, actually Shyamalan is the doctor, and he actually does a pretty good job. Because,
thank God it's like a 30-second scene.
Yeah, because he just kind of
showing
sits
up in
there,
your movies.
and he points out the bruises and stuff, and there's almost like a slight hint that he doesn't maybe trust her.
Right.
And I liked that bit too, because she's like, you don't think I did this?
Right.
Like, I wouldn't bring him in here.
She gets real defensive, but also you can tell she portrays this really well as an actress. She wants to like do something about it.
Right.
Be like, how dare you? But then she's like, if I go too aggressive, it's going to seem like I'm an actual person that would do this to my son.
Right.
So she has to be like all reserved, and he's just kind of like staring at her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that was a really well acted scene. Like they portrayed those emotions really well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is something that he would assume on some level.
Yeah.
And then she's already this fraying single mother. She's got so much going on. Yeah. And some of his issues are bleeding over, like the cabinet scene where they call open up, and she's like trying to, I don't know, get her emotions in check, while she's also like, why are you messing with me like this?
Yeah.
And he's trying to give her an explanation that doesn't make it seem like he's at fault, because he's like, I didn't do it. But she's not going to believe the fact that some ghost just came and opened all the cupboards and then left. Right. So he has to walk a thin line, and then she's got to walk a thin line. So there's just like tension from all angles that you're just kind of like, somebody's going to get hit.
Yeah. But, you know, they finally come to this moment at the end where he, you know, confides in her and tells her this stuff. And she initially takes it back, and she's like kind of freaked out. But her barriers start to come down after a while when he starts bringing up her grandmother and the things that her grandmother wanted to relay to her. And she's like, well, how could he know that? Because like grandma's been gone for a while. So that's just crazy. And like, how would she know? Like, how would he know specific things I said to my grandmother? So it's like a very clear point that he does know and that he's not making it up. And, you know, it at least like mends the relationship with his mom. But on a more important level, like I kind of like to think that when Cole does that, he's sort of finally come to understand like his path in life, and it's to like be this mediator person to help people like recognize the like true meaning of what like other people mean to them and what they've been trying to communicate for so long.
Which also brings up interesting questions about I mean, closure and death, I guess would be two big themes, because death is this very...
Yeah, he becomes like a grief counselor or something.
Exactly. But, it kind of speaks on a level that helps embody the fear of death in some way, and resolution, and what that actually looks like, or what it should, I suppose. Because in reality, obviously, you don't get a lot of that. And it's, sometimes it was interesting with that cyclist scene. There's a cyclist that dies, and you're too far back to see it, but Cole knows that it happened because the ghost shows up to him.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that cyclist, it only shows up for a second, but just kind of like turns and walks away. It's almost like she's confused. Like, one moment I'm riding my bicycle, and the next moment I'm dead. And so there's a lot of confusion there, and it's just life's over, and it was this fragile thing that now she doesn't get to do anything about. Like, that's what's written is written.
Yeah.
And then it speaks to how we leave people behind. So the the thesis in there is very strong. It's very, it's well told in multiple levels throughout the whole movie.
And it offers us something like valuable to think about like the human condition. And I think there's a real, like, it's like on the tip of my tongue, and it slipped my mind. Gosh darn it.
The word or the thought?
The thought.
Oh.
I mean, it's, where was I going with this? Gosh darn it.
Well, I was going with resolution and death.
Yeah.
Human condition.
Yeah.
It left you.
It'll come back to me.
We're getting old,
Gosh,
folks. That's it's a real fact of life, that one too. Well, before we go into this movie and further, because so many of these episodes we've done, we've been tearing things apart, right? Because Rotten Disparities is supposed to be about how they're different, and this one is so close, 86 and 90.
Yeah, it's a good movie, and I think pretty much everybody can see that.
Yeah, it's a great movie. But the disparity, remember, is not in the film. It is in the artist.
Yeah, because from this point on, it just goes to his head, and then it's a downhill. Which, it's kind of the inverse of most artists. Typically, you get better with time,
right?
And then you have
find your stride and you figure out what you're strong in and what you're not.
Yeah, and then of course you have this late stage in life where you regress.
It's almost like you get experimental. You want to try something new.
Exactly.
And then it just kind of falls apart.
I'm thinking of people like Stephen King, where he kind of builds up into these really good masterpieces, and then it becomes uncertain territory after a while. Clint Eastwood is another example where wow, good stuff. And then not sure where we're going.
Don't do your own music anymore, please.
Spielberg's an interesting one where it's just uphill. Like, he's only gone uphill. He's had ups and downs.
He's got some stubbles,
but
sure.
As he has, for every Jurassic Park, he has the Fablemans, and it's whoa, that's a huge time lapse between the two. So the fact that he can still get this super high note out of nowhere, it's kind of wow.
Well, yeah, he's always gonna have a AI in there somewhere, which also stars Haley Osment.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, I mean, Spielberg is one of those that just lives to perfect his craft, and he just has a lot of fun doing it, and it just bleeds through.
Yeah.
Hard worker, and, anyway, true artist, that one. Okay, so let's jump over to Signs real quick.
Okay. We can talk about Signs.
Oh, I see what happened here. I see what I did. Okay, that didn't work the way I thought it would. Oh, well. I thought I was being clever, and I wasn't. Okay, Signs. So this is a little closer to a disparity, which actually I'll show it up on our screen as well.
Yeah. So this is not. So he did Unbreakable, and then was it Signs?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. And Unbreakable went over pretty well, and then this one comes out, and we're starting to see it dip quite a bit. It's at 75% critics, and then 67% audiences.
Right. Yeah, because Sixth Sense is 99, Unbreakable is 2000, and then Signs is 2002.
Yeah.
Okay, so Unbreakable is fairly well received. I don't remember the scores on that one.
Yeah.
Actually, I can look that up real quick.
I remember the big problem with Unbreakable. Okay, so here's the thing. Unbreakable has a satisfying twist ending like Sixth Sense does, which is what kind of saves it. And people are like, oh, yeah, that was a good twist. but it's before that, 70.
So people liked it more than the critics did, but it's still pretty close. Like that's
Yeah. It's definitely not as good. There's some people who are unsatisfied, but for
Right.
the most part, it's like an acceptable, passable movie. And Signs is in a similar boat, I think, is it not? Yeah.
67 and 75. So obviously a little bit lower for people.
Audiences are losing their patience with it. Okay, so here's the thing. Because in Unbreakable, there's this scene at the end where he's like catching the bad guy. And it's supposed to be like this fight scene, but it's so stupid. It looks weird. You're like this camera.
It's supposed to be like a realistic fight scene.
Yeah, and it just should have been done differently. It should have been done totally differently.
Well, okay, so aside from like personal nuances with, personal problems with that scene.
No, it's objectively bad. Like,
okay.
It looks really.
So it doesn't serve artistically
I don't
story
think
of the
so.
film.
Like, if he wants to go for this, like, oh, superheroes aren't real, and this is a realistic fight. Realistic fights, don't look like that. And also, like, you've already shown that there is a supernatural element in this movie because that's the character. He can, like, sense.
Right.
He has, like, a sixth sense in that movie, too.
They are connected. Yeah,
I also think, interestingly enough, he made his main character, Bruce Willis in Unbreakable, the one who, it's like all the burden is on him now. He has no counterpoint. He has no Cole. And I think that hurts the movie, too. Because
he
there's
he has his son or whatever, but he's more just like his biggest fan rather than someone to play off of necessarily.
Yeah.
But then you have Glass. I mean, because he shows up and he's supposed to be like a counterpoint.
I've not seen that one, actually.
No, that's he shows up in the movie.
Oh, you're talking about the character Glass. That's right. Oh, yeah.
So you survived a train crash. What are you?
Yeah.
And he's like,
so
that one was so convoluted. Okay, see, I remember that scene because it was so convoluted. He's like, every bone in my body is made of glass. I just break it, everything. But I knew there had to be someone out there that was the polar opposite of me. So I started setting up all these train crashes all over the United States. I was like, what?
Okay, but think about that as like an emotional arc, right? Because this is I think hit the core of his problem, and I think if he understood this better, he'd solve a lot of his issues.
Okay.
Because Sixth Sense, we established that like it's people dealing with grief and learning to let go.
Yeah.
That's serious business.
Yeah.
It's very hard for people to do that, especially as you get older and you have more life experiences.
Okay. Yeah.
Trying to find your counterpoint as like a superhuman because you're so ill. Who relates to that? Like, who in reality has that lived experience? You don't. You kind of get what I'm saying here.
I suppose someone who has bones made of glass, but I think
that's not very many people.
From what I understand, there aren't any of those. But yeah,
there are
I guess
certain medical conditions where like your bones are like brittle.
Yeah,
but like
I know I get the point. There's not a relatable message within the film that makes you side with one or the other.
Yeah.
It's trying too hard to be realistic but also comic booky, and it doesn't do well in either realm.
Yeah.
So the movie itself is fine. It's like it's okay. It's one of his like watchable movies.
Yeah.
Cuz I watched Split and I hate that movie. I hated it. I mean, I guess we're jumping a little too far ahead, but that was supposed to be in the same universe as Unbreakable. He waits forever to make this one. And that's supposed to be like the evil counterpart of Bruce Willis's Unbreakable character. But then you have the third movie, Glass, where, Samuel Jackson characters comes back and he's like, I'm going to orchestrate this fight. And it's like, why? What are we getting out of this? Like, what is the purpose for all of these? Wasn't a fan.
It's like watch a Marvel movie. You're going to be a lot
more entertaining.
More entertaining, for sure. It's probably going to be a better structured plot.
Yes.
It's going to be more dramatic. It's going to have better action.
And these
Isn't that what I want for my
This is coming
movie?
from non-Marvel fans right here. Okay, so let's jump back into science here.
Yeah. Okay.
So obviously this takes a pretty good dip from Sixth Sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hadn't guessed, like Shyamalan's The Disparity, I think I mentioned that.
Yeah.
So we're like witnessing his decline in real time here.
Because these are all movies that he like writes, directs, oftentimes produces. Yeah, he sometimes stars in it.
And this is the second film that he has water as some significant source of a plot device-ness, I guess.
Along with Lady in the Water?
No, Unbreakable has that. Remember, his weakness is water. If he fell in the pool with the tarp or whatever and he was starting to drown.
Oh.
That was like his weakness.
That was
you don't
so
remember this?
Stupid. No, I remember the tarp in the pool.
Yeah.
I just forgot that was his
Water was his
quote-unquote
weakness. And then Signs, the aliens, they come to a 70% planet, or a planet covered in 70% of water.
Yeah.
I'm not wording that properly. They come to this planet, and they're allergic to water or something.
Yeah, but they want to abduct humans, which are mostly water.
Which are also mostly water.
But they want to abduct humans for what purpose we never find out.
Well, no, they said they wanted to harvest our goods. So they sent the ground force. The aliens were the ones they just wanted to kill people.
Really? They say that in the movie that they want to harvest our organs?
They don't want to harvest us. No, they're just killing us. They just want our planet. Which makes even less sense because we're water planet. Okay, so
that makes way less sense then. Okay. Wait, why do they bother to kidnap humans then? Just kill them.
I don't think they kidnapped him in the movie.
No, they do kidnap because they have the kid at the end and he like knocks him out with like
no,
because
remember he's taking revenge on Mel Gibson because Mel Gibson cuts his fingers off. So he's the one.
Aliens care about revenge?
You know what? Aliens are people too. So the movie itself has a lot of promise.
It does.
A lot of
There's
promise.
a lot of really good scares in this movie.
Really great. Yeah. So in the scene with the door when he like his fingers come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the
then
cornfield, the birthday party.
The birthday party is the most memorable, hands down.
Birthday party, freaky stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing it's actually I watched with you first time. I'd never seen it before.
Uh-huh.
And that scene was rough. I was like, whoa. It was
because he puts you in the mindset of those kids.
Yep.
And the family, and you're like, oh, we're at a birthday party.
Yeah, and what he did with that scene was actually really interesting too on just a, I don't know, artistic level. Yeah. So it's daylight with the birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're kind of, but he also pulls you back a level because Joaquin Phoenix is watching it in a dark room on a TV. So he's in a section which would be scary, but he's watching something there you wouldn't think scary would happen. Uh-huh. So he like kind of layers it in a way that kind of puts you off guard, and then it scares you. And I was like, that was well done because it is a really shocking scene.
Yeah,
it gets you every time.
Yeah, and it's kind of like replicating almost what you're doing because you're watching something.
Right. You're watching him watch something that something's going to happen in.
Right. Well, it's like that narrative. You see something online that freaks you out, or you watch a movie that creeps you out, and then it's hard to go to sleep that night.
Yep.
You know, he's kind of replicating some of those fears. Like, he's good at getting at some kind of, you know, almost primal fears. I don't know if that's quite the word for it, but almost the case. So, like, and this movie, I think we're both agreed, is actually perfectly fine. And, in fact, it's really good. All the way up until like the last 5 minutes. Everything prior to that point, though, is working for the film, and you're on board with it, and you're like, "This is interesting. I'm engaged. I'm creeped out. I really want to know what happens." And then it's just the payoff is so bad, and it just ruins the whole thing. He just flushes it down the toilet. It's awful.
Yeah, actually, as I'm thinking about it, so we talked a little bit beforehand about what exactly went wrong with this movie. So with Sixth Sense. You know, he so carefully crafts this narrative and the payoffs, right? All the setups are very well done, where you don't even realize they're all happening, and then it comes to a crescendo. This one, he does all these setups, and then you get to the end and you see the payoff, and the payoff almost like unravels the whole rest of the movie. Because you're like...
Yeah, it ruins everything.
I was like, what? What was that? So specifically, it's the bat. Swing where, Meryl, or whatever.
Yeah, so his oldest son wanted to be a baseball player, failed. And so Shyamalan's mind...
No, it's not. That's his wife's sister, not his son.
Oh, really? Is that who it is? Wait,
no, it's his brother. Joaquin Phoenix is his brother, Mel Gibson's brother.
Is he his brother?
Yes.
Okay. So it's his brother who's a failed baseball player.
Right.
And Shyamalan is like, okay, well, we have to resolve this arc. just like how Bruce Willis was a failed psychologist,
alien movie.
Cole is a failed communicator. So now I'm going to do the same thing with these two characters. Mel Gibson is going to be a failed religious man, a failed priest.
Right.
And that arc he actually satisfies kind of, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then Joaquin Phoenix's character is a failed baseball player. It's like, okay, let me stop you right there.
What?
If he's a failed baseball player, the only way you're going to solve this is by making him a baseball player or a baseball adjacent player. If you beat somebody or something with a baseball bat, you are not adjacent.
That's not the home run we're looking for.
You're just a thug or someone who's defending their home.
Well, and the
only two things.
The weird thing about it was that Mel's wife dies.
Yes.
In the movie, and they take a while to like show you what happened, and then it does, and she like her last words are "Swing away, Meryl, swing away."
I forgot.
And it's like, yeah, and then you're kind of like, what? Why does she care about this? But then
I guess she was trying to be like, go be that baseball player. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, so the one payoff that kind of works out is that the son has asthma. So he's running around with this inhaler. And then they can't get to the inhaler, so his lungs close up, and the aliens, through some contrived means, only use gas. They have this like biological gas that they spray over. So because he sprays it over the kid while his lungs are closed up, it doesn't kill him, right? And I was like, okay, at least I could buy that one. But as that happens, Mel's watching this alien like hold his son up, and he's like, swing away, Meryl. I was like, that's the payoff? This isn't what what? This is not what I imagined when I looked at the bat on the fireplace. Like, I'm not like, I wonder when he's going to hit that alien with it. That's just not something that's like satisfying. It's kind of like, the Rise of Skywalker when all the ships show up, and you're like, why am I rooting for this? Like, what?
Why am I rooting for this?
Because there's no setup that properly allows for that, where you're like hoping, right? Like Avengers Endgame does a really good job, because you think everyone's dead, and then they all show up to help, and you're like, all right, now we got to fight. In this one, it's like
it inspires some hope, which is like
it's
what those movies are all about.
I'm about to hit my home run now that there's an alien in the house. It's like, what? Okay, I don't get this. But then it's rough because they set the aliens up. I forgot who says it. I think it might be Shyamalan's character, where he's like, they sent a ground force in to take out the humans or whatever. Because then he goes into other exposition that he should never know. He's like, I heard that they're allergic to water, so we're gonna go close to water and hopefully stay safe.
Yeah, Shyamalan says that. He's like, you should stay by the water. I heard they don't like water.
Right. And then he drives off.
Away.
So
let me just pro tip.
Right. Yeah. Let me tell you something I shouldn't know. But the worst part about that is that the other thing is that the little girl never finishes cups of water. And so she has just these half-filled glasses all over the house. Again, it's so contrived, because the way that he wins, these aliens are supposed to be these ground combat things, and they're fighting with their hands. They don't have any weapons. They have these claws, and then they
don't have any armor. Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, well, so they got to be able to handle themselves to some extent, right? No, this thing just sits there and gets beat up by this bat. Yeah. And then it falls over, and then these glasses of water drip over, and it treats it like acid. It's like, okay, so the one house that she just happens to never finish a glass of water is where he picks a fight.
Well, and I also don't like that, because if the whole purpose was to have him finish his narrative arc by beating something with a ball bat, he doesn't even get to do that because the water does it for him. So it's like a squirt gun would have been a way more effective strategy.
Yeah, everybody get some super soakers. We're about to win this war. It's so stupid.
Well, and this is the other. So that's why that.
What would have been better before you consider it? What would have been better is if Joaquin Phoenix had beaten someone to death with a bat before. So he didn't want to pick up a bat, but then he has the opportunity. That's when he's like, swing away. So he gets to beat something to death that's not a human. It's like tormenting him the whole movie. And then he's like, I'm going to redeem myself.
Yeah, he gets early parole because of the circumstances or whatever. And so, that would actually make sense.
It would. It would have been a stupid thing to do,
but his brother is a Catholic and a priest,
right?
So he's
why would you beat something like that to death?
And then, then they could. So you could theoretically use that. It could work because he would have given into
Shyamalan.
like like the temptations of sin or like anger or whatever, and he was just like,
You
and then
should just have scenes where he's like looking at the bat and it's like talking to him, or he's like feeling the urge.
I wouldn't go that
I
far.
need to hit someone.
No, it just needs to be. It just needs to be a circumstance in which he killed somebody in some kind of violent rage, I guess. And then Mel Gibson's character is trying to have him come back down and like repent, and he does that, but it's like it's tense and he doesn't almost want to.
Sure.
Right? Because like the reason he killed this person was because like that person killed his wife or something like that. Whatever.
Looked at him wrong.
Yeah, no, it needs to be something dramatic. It needs
you
to be,
disrespect
it has
my
to be
bat.
valid.
It's just
he put tomatoes on his burger when he said no tomatoes. It needs to be
sin, cardinal sin. No, this is Negan's backstory.
No,
yeah, it's Lucille.
It's Lucille.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I'm done.
Okay, but then what you could do is you can't use the bat. Okay. The bat is a one-time deal. So do you want your bat at the end of the movie or do you want it beforehand? One or the other. So he could kill the guy at the beginning with a crowbar, and then you can use the bat at the end. Okay? And you can't say swing away.
Yeah,
don't say
because why
that.
would you have the bat used to kill someone in like a shrine on the fireplace?
Right.
Like,
that's stupid.
That's my.
And you don't want to draw attention that you are making a comparison because it's not very good. What you want to do is keep it focused on his character development. So his character is like, okay, well, this is circumstances where it is justified to beat this thing to death,
right? Because
it's an alien and it's abducting your nephew. So step up. And so you could do it that way. And then he could be like somewhat resistant, but then it's like he kind of just lets himself loose or whatever. This is like a somewhat salvageable way to get it across, but like the fundamental problem is like like the water and the ball bat is like these are silly. It's silly solutions.
Really
to
dumb.
It's just the actual content of it can only look so dramatic. It's not going to work.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at Negan. Negan's a great example. He's terrifying.
Yeah,
he is a horrifying individual, and he's got the ball bat, but it's not quite the same. He just seems like he's a little bit off his rocker, and he has so much control that nobody is able to question or criticize him in any way. So the fact that he has this spiked baseball bat is sort of like, I don't want to get hit with that thing, especially because they deliver on it and he beats characters to death with it. And then you're like, oh gosh.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, that one's
That's
just
making
like
drama out of a ball bat. This is not.
I still like the idea of the bat like talking to him and he has to resist the urge to beat people. And then he finally has an outlet.
You want to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been so long.
Get away.
Since you've tasted the blood. He's like a Jekyll and Hyde.
Come back. Come back to us, Meryl. We miss you.
Number 43. That was our number.
It's the one.
43. Or whatever. He's got his jersey.
Right. Yeah, that's hanging up there, covered in blood. Yeah, so I guess like the thing that saves
baseball blade.
Exactly. The thing that saves this movie is it has some pretty strong family themes in it. Just kind of how they deal with it as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then how Mel Gibson kind of struggles with his faith and then refines it and stuff. Like all that stuff is pretty solid. So there's enough there. There's enough heart there for people to be able to latch onto and be like, okay, despite it being because that's his shtick, right? He puts these emotional themes into these suspenseful films, so it gives them a lot of heart rather than just a generic like jump scare film.
Okay, yeah, that was the point I was going to say earlier, is that
there it is.
Instead of, in Sixth Sense, it's a ghost story, and normally when you get a ghost story, you just get spooky scares and then it ends.
Right.
And he changed that because he told a really powerful narrative about, like, again, grief and loss, which is what ghosts are actually about. So that there's a narrative continuity there. And so when he gets to this one, I could kind of see where the inspiration is coming from, because sometimes people of faith are they struggle with this concept of like aliens or
Right.
things that are, I guess, I don't want to say supernatural, but like
Extraterrestrial.
there's usually like explanations, and like aliens don't fit into the explanations for real, like for the meaning of life or whatever. So when they have to contend with that, but the thing is I never really get that Mel Gibson is like, aliens aren't real, or like, the congregation is stupid because they think that this stuff is real and it's not. It's just ridiculous. Like that's not what happens. Instead, he's already abandoned his faith, and we don't really know why.
Right.
It's just that his wife has died, so you're like, okay, so I guess he's going through a rough patch.
Right.
And then like somehow watching his brother beat an alien to death with a baseball bat is enough to have him reclaim his faith. Yeah, that's how I got my faith restored. There is a God now.
There it is.
So the emotional like resolution that he wants in this one is there. You can see it. I like the last shot where you see Mel Gibson putting on his uniform, his cufflinks and stuff, and then he goes off to Sunday Mass. I'm like, okay, that's good. It's just like, how did we get to here? How does this make sense? Like, given, like, I don't know what he experienced that somehow changed his faith in any meaningful way.
I mean, it was his son coming close to death, I think, was the point. Because he's out there hoping that the inhaler will bring him back. He's like, oh, please say his lungs were closed up. So
is that supposed to be like a reliant on technology or something then? And he needs to rely on his faith? Is that what they're trying to do?
Yeah, because he had faith that he didn't inhale a gas, and so it didn't kill him.
Okay.
So I mean, it plays into that theme a little bit, but again, like it wasn't as carefully crafted for sure as Sixth Sense. But then he thought that he could get away with this twist without having an actually good twist. And so it just decreased the quality naturally because, Sixth Sense is designed around that twist.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has those two narratives where you're kind of playing with the presuppositions of traditional horror fans and also putting in these really powerful elements that, made up the narrative of ghosts in the first place. When you get to Signs, he does the whole faith and aliens thing where the unexplainable with, the explainable, I guess, science versus non, or God versus science, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But not everything in the story leads to that. And then you have moments where the thing's like dying by these glasses of water falling on it, or him beating it with a bat, where it's like, these are not payoffs that play into the story. So it just kind of like fumbles with the arc. And you're like, well, I don't know what to get from this anymore.
Yeah.
Just because this resolution doesn't make any sense. Like on a family level, it was fine, him saving his son and such. But at that point, it just kind of demoralized the aliens altogether. It just took away all their gravitas and was like, everything that I was scared of for the whole movie just got beat up by this little guy. It was sad.
And here's the other thing too. Even though I think the scares are executed well in terms of freaking you out in Signs, I actually think they're not as good as The Sixth Sense, for the simple reason that they're just there to scare. They're not there to serve the narrative, and that's the problem.
Right.
Whereas if you look at The Sixth Sense, everything is that dual-natured property. So, like one of the key themes in Sixth Sense is that the ghosts see what they want to see.
Right.
Right. And so if you're only seeing what you want to see, it means that a lot of the things you think you're perceiving is just the way that you would prefer it. And so that's like this really powerful, this extra message about how limited our perception of reality actually is.
Right.
Right. And so when he replays certain shots or sequences and you see things in a different light and you're like, oh man, this person only saw this, but this person only saw that when that scene was happening, right? And they were totally at odds with each other.
Yeah.
It's illuminating how now it serves something meaningful in the story. That never happens in Signs. It's just, that was just a creepy scene. And like, he's never, Mel Gibson's character is never confronted with like, well, no, like faith doesn't allow this to exist, so I saw something else. And I'm not saying it needs to be a sight thing, but it just needs to be a thing.
Sure.
That he needs to be using these scares not just to scare. Like the birthday one, I think is commendable because that one's kind of playing into like formative years, I guess. So you could start pulling a link if he wants to poke at that a little more.
Well, that's also the first time you see one of the things. So it brings them into reality, which would make you question, okay, what is it that I believe that is real? Or, how does this challenge my faith? Or, that kind of thing would play into those themes, and it didn't at all.
No,
so,
it didn't.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Sixth Sense is that you keep going back and rewatching it with all these themes in mind, and it changes it.
Right.
Or it gives you different answers or more to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Sixth Signs does not do that. Okay, so that being said, let's get into where he actually goes downhill hard, right? Because that one gets a dip for sure. But then you get to that.
44 critics, 57 audience.
Yeah.
Well, this one's just bad, pretty much.
I remember liking this when I was a kid.
The concept of it is fascinating.
It is. But again, he puts that twist in it that's like, what?
Yeah.
I think at this point I would have played with my own presuppositions because everyone knows me as the twist guy, right? So if that were the case,
if you were Shaman, if I was Shaman, what would I do?
What would I do? Yeah, because the twist in this one is that none of it's real, right? They're manipulating reality in order to save people, which inherently the themes of it are interesting.
Yeah.
Right, because they think there's too much evil in the world, so they go live in the middle of nowhere. It's like an Amish community if the Amish community manipulated people with creature outfits to stay.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, it's almost cult-like.
Right.
Or folk horror, almost. It starts to blend into that a little bit.
Right.
So he's got some interesting, he's going into different spaces. Okay, one other thing about Signs that I think might actually tie into this is that I think it's important to note that he's tackling different subgenres of horror, and some of them he knows what to do with, and others he very clearly does not. With the ghosts, he seemed to know what to do with that.
Yep.
When it came to aliens, It's like he was trying to do science fiction, and it's like, okay, aliens cannot be weak to water. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work.
Not on Earth, yeah.
Not on Earth. Not if, it's just how do you make a story like that feasibly viable? It's just counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And so that's like a major problem there. And now he's getting into like folk horror, which I think the scares have potential in here, but I just also feel like it's another subgenre of horror that he doesn't fully grasp.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, because it's just very... The emotional themes they fall kind of flat as well. It's not as strong in the character. Like, these are not as memorable characters in here.
I don't really even remember anyone in this movie.
Well, the whole like thing about
I remember Joaquin Phoenix is a weird person. He's like...
Yeah, he's like touched or something, and then Bryce Dallas Howard is blind.
Okay.
And that's like their excuse, but that even made it worse because she like runs through the forest and somehow makes it out without being able to see it all.
Yeah.
The elders are the ones that are the creatures and stuff. Like, it's a mess. It's all over the place. Like I said, it had promise, but he didn't center on a theme except world evil, escape from world, and find that the evil followed us because we are the evil, right? In like some way, I think that's what he was trying to convey.
That's interesting.
It doesn't matter where you go; he will follow you wherever humans are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, running from evil isn't going to save you from it. Like I said, some of these themes are interesting.
Yeah,
but it wasn't played out very well. And I think he was trying to tell that the most with Joaquin Phoenix's character, right? Because he had this violent tendency because he wasn't quite fully developed. He wasn't. Whatever it was, he was some kind of handicapped of some sort. And in some level, he was pure in his desire, but also like very basic. So he couldn't control it or refine it through maturity. And so, I forgot what it is, but he attacks Bryce Dallas Howard in the end and ends up killing himself.
Yeah.
And he kind of dies alone. It's like, okay, I get
because he's
themes.
The monster.
Right.
Yeah, I just...
And obviously no one likes it. Like, how do you go from a 90% or 85, 90% all the way down to 44 and 57?
Well, the reason is that this one's not scary. And
There's that.
The first half of it has you on edge, kind of creeped out. But unlike Signs, where it kept you creeped out until like one scene that ruined the whole movie, but you still enjoyed most of the time spent.
Yeah.
This movie, it's like halfway through, you're like, all right, well, this looks bad now.
Yeah.
Because like you see, like there's this one scene where Joaquin Phoenix is dressed up as the monster, and it's like a close up on her, and then the camera like moves to the side, and like you see the monster, and you're like, oh, that's freaky. And then the monster starts running at her, and then she just like moves out of the way, and then he like runs past her, and you're just like, wait, what happened there? Like that was stupid.
And it's in like broad daylight.
Yeah.
It
just starts to kind of not really be trying to drive home that like freak out sensation.
Right.
So it's like not even doing that, which is why it ultimately just falls apart, I think.
Yeah.
Or like for audiences and critics, because it's not even delivering on like the base, because like the high standard of Sixth Sense is like this thoughtfulness, this cerebral thing that goes with the horror. That's like what he's best at. But like the fact that it didn't really work out in Signs was like passable because he still had like decent filmmaking. But this is just like some college project that sucks pretty much.
High budget for sure, but otherwise not worth seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is where we got into him being the disparity, because he's even gone on record a lot of times going, oh, well, people just don't understand my art.
We clearly do. We've just unpacked
right
2 of your movies thoroughly with like the emotional arc you were obviously going for.
And we haven't even seen
people understand, Shyamalan.
Yeah. We haven't even seen Signs in a while. But yeah, the themes obviously were there, clear enough. And Village is just, it doesn't have a clear focus. Whereas Sixth Sense, everything was like hyper focused into this message, and even layered, but still had like that central thesis around which it was built. Village doesn't really have that.
Yeah.
Signs fumbles with it quite a bit. It's a little bit stronger than Village, but ultimately not so much. And then he tries his hand at something else. So we're gonna go in to here. This isn't the way I wanted to do this, but we're gonna do it this way anyway. Yeah, so
we're not going to do a thorough analysis on Village.
We're not going to do all of this. Yeah, no. It's not even worth it. Watch it if you're interested. Then we get here. This is a bad.
25% critics and then 49% audiences. This is critically worse than Village. What was Village's audience score? 57. So it's dropped from both. Not that much worse for audiences, but still worse. And then for critics, it's just like, this is a massive no. I heard with this one actually that, weirdly enough, because this one was, this is a Disney project, I think, right?
No. They would have had their name plastered all over this thing. No,
I guess so. Who published this, or who produced it?
Good question.
I thought it was Disney for some reason. They were presiding by another name.
Warner Brothers.
Okay, so it was Warner Brothers.
And Legendary, yeah.
I heard that, I don't know why I thought it was Disney, but I heard that actually with this movie, Shyamalan was like complaining about the failure of Village, and he was like, oh, like you guys just need to let me like do my vision and stop doing oversight. Warner Brothers was like, okay.
Oh. So this
for this
is
one,
entirely his project.
So this one, if you want to blame a Shyamalan movie and that it's Shyamalan's fault, it's this one. Because this is the one where, as far as I know, he had total universal control. They said, yeah, like you go for it, man. Like we trust you. You got the vision.
Which would have been his one and only chance, because it's like, all right, well, we've got Sixth Sense, so he's clearly capable. Let's let him have it, because the last time I got involved, it didn't do well.
Yeah.
And then he did that.
This one, he tries to go for... See, this one's weird because it's labeled as a fantasy drama. So now we're getting into fantasy.
Yeah. Have you seen this one?
Oh, I've seen it.
Okay.
It's bad.
It's a bad movie.
And this one, just like in Village, has these just really awful, annoying shots where you're like, why am I looking at this?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you just like move the camera somewhere else? It's like, I just want the camera to be anywhere else, like literally anywhere. And it's so strange how that happens when with the other, it just feels like he's experimenting for the sake of experimenting. Like, let's put the camera here just because. And it's like, does that actually serve any purpose?
Right. It doesn't serve any artistic merit, or it doesn't tell
Yeah.
the story in any interesting way. It's just kind of
I remember he has
just
one
'cause.
shot that I hated in this, but then like in the background you see Bryce Dallas Howard's character like flop in the pool or something.
Uh,
And I was like, okay, so this shot did have a purpose. None of the others really seemed to, but this one did. So, okay, I can at least forgive that one
sure.
because he was like, just the guy was distracted and it was showing that he was like, he's not seeing what's happening to the thing that we're seeing. It's like a Hitchcock thing. But
And some of this, yeah, I don't even want to get into this one too far either. It was a weird attempt at fantasy. It almost removed all of his thriller elements, so he was like trying to step out of his bubble or something, and just fell hard on his face.
And this is the one where he's in the movie as a prominent character, and he's a writer character that no one understands, but he's gonna do.
I forgot about that.
It's just I'm just telling you what's in
It's
the
like
movie.
he's trying to tell the audience, like, I hate you guys. Just pay attention. You're not paying attention.
Yeah, because Paul Giamatti's character or someone has to tell him like you're gonna be a great artist someday, and he's just like, really?
No.
And you're like, what is this? We don't need this. Nobody cares. And then you have the Hollywood hack studio writer character who's like, this must be the part in the movie where
Oh my gosh, I forgot.
a less important
Yeah, he's
character
constantly
gets eaten.
equating what's going on around him with some movie motif.
Right, and
He's
then
like,
it happens.
Oh, if we go down there, it'll be like the horror movie when you go walk off alone, or he's not going to make it back. And then the guy doesn't make it back or whatever. And it's like, all right, man. Like, why are you talking to the audience? This is that thing, like Deadpool does it on purpose. And we've
okay,
talked
that's
about
a
this.
character who's the whole premise is doing that. So if you're not comfortable with that, you just don't get Deadpool. And I'm not a Deadpool fan at all. I don't like that content.
Right.
But I respect that it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And fans clearly like it because that's what they want from Deadpool. That's what he's supposed to be.
Yeah, well, his way of showing you that he takes nothing seriously is that he's willing to reach out past the film that he's stuck in and talk to the audience.
Right.
And so
you could both have a good laugh about
this
that.
one, when an artist feels like he has to communicate directly to you in this way, just on on all levels, but even subconsciously, you assume that he's not, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sincere?
He's not confident enough to allow you to interpret what he's trying to tell you. And most of the time, like, if you have a blatant message, it should either be told to have a blatant message, or art is supposed to be interpretive. That's why it's subjective.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to tell them what your message is by blatantly telling them what your message is, like, then you're a bad storyteller. You're a bad artist. Yeah. And the thing about Shyamalan is that he's not. He has the ability of sixth sense, which is a masterpiece on every level.
Right.
This one, he literally has a character telling everything, like expositing everything.
Right.
And it's like,
and he's got that guy who only works out like one half of his body. It's like,
for no reason. It's something that you remember, but that's the thing, is that now it's just distracting. Right. It's not adding anything to the story. It's just something that will bring your mind back to it. It's like, oh yeah, that's that one with the guy that has one ripped side of his body and one not. And it's like, why is that in there? And it's just to keep, it's like, well, they're not going to remember anything else, but they'll remember this, so they'll remember my movie. That's what it feels like. Paul Giamatti and Bryce Dallas Howard do a good enough job. It's just the source material is not compelling enough to justify a movie. Let alone one where he's trying to make some statement that, to be fair, I mean, despite our misgivings with Rian Johnson making an artistic statement in Star Wars, like, at least this is his piece to make the statement, but you can tell that no one likes it.
I mean,
like,
he
no one
does
agreed.
A lot of like questionable things in this too, though. I mean, like the self-insert, that's you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it'd be different. Maybe you could kind of hand wave it if it was a different actor and it just happens to be a writer and he's just talking about artists or whatever. I'm like, all right, similar but different. No, it's him. It's straight up him in the movie. And it's like, so this is about you then. It's like, you need to do something so that we know it's not about you. Like, Bradley Cooper is a person who can be in his own freaking movie because he's able to kind of make sure that like he's still following the script, and the script itself, it's like that was like a separate activity of like working on the script, making sure the story's down. And he's like, okay, now I just have to be the character. And then, he has like, and I don't know, like maybe he's not the best example, but at least his movies are like, they feel like they're far more focused on like the integrity of the story.
Right.
You might feel like he's pretentious when he's playing the character, but at the same time, he's at least trying to play the character. Whereas in this, it's like, you made up this character. The character's you. He's a writer. He's someone that nobody likes. Like,
not only is it a self-insert, but it's a self-insert. He might as well just be named M. Night Shyamalan in the movie.
Yeah, that's the only thing that wasn't there. I'm not even convinced that wasn't his name, to be honest with you.
And I'm not going to pull up the rest of them, but from here on, it just
You are
going
to do one more, though.
Okay.
You're going to do The Happening.
Oh, my. What? No.
The Happening is like...
It should not be... there it is.
Okay.
Oh, I guess this is the next one, isn't it?
This is the next one in line, I think, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And now we're down to 18% critics.
24%.
24 audience. Okay, here's the thing with this one. I actually feel like if this movie had come out instead of Signs, and assuming it wasn't Mark Wahlberg.
What? No.
I actually think this one would have gone over a lot better.
Okay.
Because The Happening it's a very disturbing subject matter. It's pretty dark. It's just people decide to kill themselves
in the worst ways
for
possible.
no reason.
Yeah.
In really like graphic, horrific ways.
Right.
And so there's definitely some workable material there. Like there's the shot where everybody's just like walking off the top of a building.
Right. Yeah,
That's
that
like,
famous trailer shot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what is going on? Like we've totally lost our minds. And so this how humanity so now he's in apocalyptic territory, by the way.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Another genre.
Yep. Shifted over. He is back to something more along the horrifying line. So he's running into a little bit more of the thriller territory, but it is definitely, it's apocalyptic. So it's an entirely new genre with these elements.
Yeah. Yeah. But this one too, there is this, so the emotional heart of this movie is that, I can't remember exactly, but
it's
his
the
wife,
plants.
Well, no. The emotional heart is him and his wife are trying to have a baby, or him and his girlfriend. And then she gets pregnant by the end of the movie.
Okay.
Which is like a sign of like, life as opposed to everybody else who's killing themselves. So that was like, there's at least a connection or correlation, I guess, between the two. So I feel like this movie has enough like moments in it where I'm like, this could have worked almost. But when you have Mark Wahlberg going, here it comes, and they're running for the wind, it's like, okay, so now all credibility has just completely disappeared.
What?
You had me,
No.
and then it's gone. Whereas, like, with Lady in the Water, like, I was never going to think anything in that movie was scary.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
Well, there's literally a scene where Wahlberg's running from the wind.
Yeah.
You can see it blowing through bushes or whatever, and he, like, turns around, here it comes! And, like, it's
just like that.
No, you didn't. Oh, man. It's so, I don't know, it's like 80s B-horror film.
It is.
Material.
So he needs to change the premise. It can't be the plants, because that's the big thing in this one, is that the plants are killing humans because they don't like humans anymore.
Yeah, it's like this cultural or like global, Mother Earth message. It's like, we're hurting the earth, so it's fighting back. So these plants are like releasing this toxin that takes away your will to live or something. The more he explains, the dumber it gets. But, the interesting thing in the beginning, he only almost pulls like an Abrams here, because in the beginning, you're kind of hooked because it's interesting. It's like, well, why are these people just offing themselves?
Yeah,
like some dude like lays under a lawnmower, some girl like stabs herself in the back of the neck with one of her like hair tie things. And, it's all just kind of like, oh, that was shocking. It was like they all got in a room and thought of the worst ways to die.
Yeah.
But people are just doing it to themselves. And so it's on some level, like, it's just shock value for shock value, which is one of the things I didn't like about it. I was like, you're just making this graphic and violent so that like we're pulled in.
Yeah,
it's
this is the
cheap.
first one where he's like, I'm going with an R rating.
Right.
I need a new premise, so we'll tackle apocalypse now. I also need it to be more intense. So it's going to need to be R, and we're going to have plants killing people.
Bam. We got a movie. And everyone disagreed. Yeah, and I think this was kind of where I jumped off the ship before this for sure. I barely even watched. I think I watched this a long time after it came out. Because
This is the
I
last
remember
one I saw. I
remember you told me about it. And I was like, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
And then I watched it. And I was like, yeah, that was bad. That was really bad.
For me, this is the last movie in the Shyamalan verse. And it's basically like it's after he'd covered all the subgenres, and it's also when he switches after this point to do other types of movies. He gets back into the Shyamalan verse 2. It's the multiverse of the Shyamalan verse, and that's what he's doing now with
this is like his
Trap
Renaissance
and
era.
Glass. Yeah, this is his Renaissance, Shyamalan Renaissance, if you will.
Shyamalan-assance.
But it is like that. Like there's a very prominent theme with all of these movies. It's an original script. He directs it. He often produces it. I think, and then he at least he's in charge of all the creative decisions, and then he hires like a big name lead actor,
right?
And he often like has them carry over from one movie into another. So like the first two, like Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, Bruce Willis, and then you got was it Village next?
Village was Bryce Dallas Howard, and Joaquin Phoenix was the one he pulled over.
Oh no, and then Signs had Joaquin Phoenix, and then The Village also Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard. Then Lady in the Water, Bryce Dallas Howard again.
And Paul Giamatti,
but you see how like he kind of had similar actors kind of. So and it's a similar like premise too, like a family man, a family man, a family man, a family man.
What was Giamatti's shtick?
He was not a family man. That was the problem.
He was just a really friendly guy.
He was a guy who had like no family.
So she became his family.
Well, she did, and so did everybody at the hotel, kind of thing.
Right.
They're all like friends in the end. It's really dumb.
They're fighting the monkey monsters or whatever the hell it was.
But and they're all trying to resolve this emotional arc or whatever. But like you look nowadays, even like with Trap, that movie that we've not seen, but it's all over the trailer, and like they're like, oh, but really he's the serial killer. It just says that straight up in the trailer. You're like, oh, so the twist. So that's the twist. Is the main guy you're following is the serial killer? He is the bad guy this time.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Like, is there supposed to be an emotional, satisfying arc to that? I'm not seeing it, but sure. But yeah, anyway, so this is his Renaissance era, and I think it's a really fascinating era because then after this, he has this period where he's like, I'm not going to do this stuff anymore. Nobody's getting it. And then he goes and he does Avatar: Last Airbender and some other.
Oh, he did the Will Smith one, After Earth.
After Earth, which was just sci-fi. No more of this.
One that I
horror
actually
stuff, because even Lady in the Water has horror stuff in it, even though it said sci-fi or fantasy drama, it had horror moments in there, or attempts at them, anyways.
And I never saw After Earth.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're talking about Shyamalan Renaissance. Shyamalan's.
Well, no, the Renaissance is after when he's tried to come back. That's his Renaissance era.
Oh, so what do you call this era then?
Just the original.
So that would be like
the original downfall, the original fall, the fall.
So, so that would be, but there's a word for it when you're in your. I want to say golden age, but golden age is when it's good. So I don't know that counts because there's only one good one.
Yeah, I don't know what you call it because his golden age was Sixth Sense, but that's where he started, and then he just like,
and then it just keeps going down.
I don't know, but his Renaissance would be when he starts making movies again, even though none of those are well received or good either.
Yeah. But they're distinctively different.
This is, I think, a testament to a truly good piece of art, right? With Sixth Sense. Like, he put his name on the map so solidly that people will still go watch. Even after all of this,
everyone is like holding out for another Sixth Sense movie.
Right.
And most of us have given up.
It will not happen.
I would like to just say
it will not happen from Shyamalan. Period.
The sad thing is if he had just cut all these crappy movies, just do one. Take 10 years making the thing. You'll get that script down.
Something will come out of it. He'd have fixed Sixth Sense in that time, or Signs in that time, I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
And that would have been a good movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this would be a conversation about how he's a mixed bag, like a lot of artists. But he's not a mixed bag. He had one hit wonder. Yeah. And then everything else, like everything. Even when you classify it by eras, it's all bad. It's just different types of bad. That's all we're talking about here.
Yeah, I gave up one and took on the other just to ruin that one too.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've made our point. Rotten Disparities for an artist this time, which I know is a little odd. Don't do that. You're shaking the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been different, but I actually kind of like this one, kind of seeing his whole career and like the crust of it, because it isn't a single movie or a couple of movies. This is his whole career, and he's been someone that we've not despised, but like just we've
with the
had a hard time with. Yeah,
with the exception of Lady in the Water, most of his movies feel like he is making an attempt, and they are his ideas.
Yeah.
It's just that he doesn't seem to. He stopped filtering his ideas. He stopped like criticizing them, and he stopped kind of evaluating like what does this story actually need to be effective, and maybe squirt guns isn't gonna work, and that doesn't mean you can just excuse it away with a baseball bat. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't like interrogate some of the more important questions that he clearly did with Sixth Sense. Like there's a lot of ways you could have made Sixth Sense stupid too, and he didn't. And we talked actually about that, about like that, some of the scenes, the way he sets up those shots to convey the message. It's like, wow, if you do this different, like how stupid it would have been if during Sixth Sense, where she's like hugging the guy, and then like you see Bruce Willis like, out the window, like that would have looked dumb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
he
so
knew when to pull back and when to show something. Yeah.
Yeah, he clearly understood that when he was making that movie. He was like, no, that's just gonna look cheesy. Let's do it this way. But it kind of, the thing with him that I'm always left with is it makes me wonder like how much of it was his talent in Sixth Sense versus just like other people holding that project together. And like I hate to say that because it's like I know part of it is him. Like he wrote the script, it's his idea, and it's a brilliant concept, and he executes it well. But it's just strange that like he just it's such a disparity. It's such a huge jump.
I think that's that point I was making with the Star Wars video is art through adversity. I'll just call it that. And it's not a it's just a hard and fast rule. But when you're forced to really consider what this will do, right? Because for Sixth Sense, it's his first movie. He's like, if I bomb this, I'm done.
Well, it's not the first film he ever made, but it is like the first like big movie,
right?
That's going to be like in theaters, American audience. Because he did like a comedy before that. I don't even know if it came to the U.S. though.
Okay.
Or it had like very limited release. It was like a home movie thing. Okay. So like this is like his big break kind of movie, right? So, but yes, you're right. So it's a big break movie. Go on.
But he has to like consider all those factors because he's like, well, this has to be a really good script. It has to be something that will put my name on the map.
Yeah.
So in that, he's like, well, I'm going to rewrite the script like 6,000 times.
Yeah.
And make gold. I'm going to refine this thing until like it is solid.
Right. And that movie, Sixth Sense, the script for that, I remember a producer or someone saying it was going to get vaulted. And he said, oh, no, it's not. This is a great script. And I don't want that to happen to this movie. And he's like, so tooth and nail, we're going to have to figure out how to get this movie funded. And we need to do it now. And so there was someone else who was responsible for like spearheading that movie to make sure that it got made. And like, good for him for like noticing the value of the script, because there's so many Hollywood scripts that just get vaulted.
Yep.
They buy it up and then they don't make it because they don't have the resources or whatever,
right?
Or they don't care to invest it in that moment, but they just don't want someone else to make it. And it's like, but anyways, like it's interesting that it was so good that everybody was like, we got to make this vision come to life. Right. And then they do it. And then it also like inevitably causes all of this stuff.
Yeah, the ruin of his career. Because that's what happened with Lucas too, is that he sat there and made sure that he had gold to make sure that he won. Same with Denis. When he made Dune, it was like, well, you got one contract. He's like, well, I don't have enough space here to do the whole story, and I'm not gonna sacrifice the story in order to fit it all into one movie. So he's like, well, I got to make it into part one, even though I might not get part two. I'm going to make it so that it's faithful to the fans, because otherwise I'm not going to succeed. Because if you sacrifice that, then people they're not going to support you. You're definitely not getting a second movie.
Well, Denis had kind of proven himself as like at least a competent movie director before that point. I think it's more interesting to compare with Lucas, because Lucas, I see a lot of parallels with Shyamalan, because Lucas also was like an original thinker, did some unique stuff, and then he does Star Wars, which is this rigorous effort on his part to create. Right.
And then he let it get to his head.
Yeah,
Same kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, he goes back to do the prequels, and it's just it's like no one else has a say in how the movie's going to be made. I mean, at least in Lucas's case, that's how he had to do No Hope. because nobody believed in the project. So he's like, well, shucks, if nobody believes in it but me, I'll just have to tell you exactly what to do.
Right.
And you're just going to have to take my word for it. You signed up for the project because you need the money, so I don't really care what your reason is. I need you to do this for me. So,
it's right there.
You know,
right
like
there. Poetry so that they rhyme.
Yeah, but then he gets to the prequels, and it's like he hasn't gotten out of that mindset.
Right.
And
but he's still, arguably, I mean, I think he's more talented in a lot of ways. Like, he at least is drawing these parallels and still investing in these artistic motifs of the films.
Yeah.
And he just got beat down. Like, whereas Shyamalan is like, no, it is artistic. Believe me, bro. And it's like,
believe me, bro.
If the audience doesn't like it, then you failed to communicate, on the level that you wanted to communicate on. Like, that's not our fault. That's your fault. You're supposed to have made something that communicated to us. We're not supposed to interpret your meaning.
He should have taken I hate to say this, but it's almost like, I wonder what we would have thought of Shyamalan had he just taken like a Richard Kelly approach. I think that's his name.
Who's this?
He's the guy who made that Jake Gyllenhaal movie. It's like a classic with the giant rabbit that he sees.
Donnie Darko?
Donnie Darko, yeah. The guy who directed that movie, that's the only movie he directed.
Oh.
And people have been like, man, like, it seems like you've got this genius here. Why didn't you do anything else? And he was like, I don't know. That was just like, that was the movie that I made, and I was proud of it. And
made bank off of it.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, like, so it's just kind of a fascinating specimen that he never did anything more. And it's like, imagine what the world would have been like if we had just Sixth Sense and not all this.
And we'd wonder where this mysterious man went after all that time. Well,
like, quit while you're ahead.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think we have gone far enough here. We're at an hour and a half. We've gone through quite a few of his films. Obviously not in depth like we have with other videos, but
yeah, well, we were covering a lot.
Yeah.
Can I get you to sound off with which of these movies is the worst?
Oh, of the films that we went over?
Yeah.
I'd have to go with Happening. Like, Lady in the Water is close. It's close.
Yeah, I'm Lady in the Water myself, but it is close.
It's so close. I think Lady in the Water is a lot more egregious in a lot of its ways, but I think Happening overall is just a lot less watchable.
I think I can watch Happening a little easier. I get your reason though, where you're saying like it just feels so like shock value for shock value. That wasn't quite how I took it. I mean, it did feel like that, but it also felt like it was still new for Shyamalan.
Well, that's not.
So there was a little newness there.
That's not the biggest turnoff. Like, you have a mixture of Mark Wahlberg trying to do this serious role that he just is incapable of doing. The stupid reason that the plants are killing people, and
I just hate all the characters and the cinematography in Lady of the Water. I can't do it.
Agreed. And the exposition in it makes me just it infuriates me. I'm like, why is this grandma character even here at all? She's just here to be like, that's the monkey thing. And it's like, okay, come on. You don't know all of this stuff. Like, it'd be more interesting if she had a book or something and it was like, this is what they believe it is, and then you find out it's not the case. That's more interesting when you exposit something and you're wrong.
Right.
But she was expositing everything and it was all correct. And it was like, all right, how you know? How do you know this?
She knows.
Okay. And it was dumb. It was so dumb. And it was like they tried to do it with this like comedic way of doing it because she didn't speak English, so she had like her daughter like translating everything for her, and it was just bad. It was so bad. Yeah, I mean, I liked it for the music, and I mean, that is one thing that Shyamalan will always deliver indirectly, is because he has James Newton Howard doing all of his music. And James Newton Howard is just going to give you gold. Like, you're going to get a great soundtrack.
Yeah, the score for all of these movies is
fantastic.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because Shyamalan, for like Signs, he was like, I don't want any music. I want pretty much no music. Well, that went out the window. Yeah. Newton Howard was like, whatever. I'm just going to do my music. This is what I want.
Shut up, and man. You don't know what you're talking about.
That's really good.
Yeah, I know.
I'll put that in the movie. Yeah. He must like working with him because he's like, whatever. You just tell me the theme and I'll just make something up. I get to do whatever I want for a while. I don't have to have someone beating down my neck about I have to do it this way or that way. I can just compose some music.
He doesn't know what he's talking about, so I'll just do it. All right. M. Night Shyamalan. Well, do you have any final thoughts to close us out?
Just that I want to talk about him again someday. He's a fun one.
He is a fun one. We'll probably choose like one or two of his later films. We'll have to suffer through like Old or Trapped or something.
Yeah, I want to see Old because it seems like he tried to go back into the vein of these kind of movies with Old.
Yeah, I don't know what he's trying to do, but we can watch that one and see what we can do with it. Shyamalan. Anyway, thank you for watching. This has been Rotten Disparities on the HolmFront.